Presentation of 13ABC Action News. Now, your table is ready. Join 13ABC's Jeff Smith with the decision makers of Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. This is the Roundtable.
And a good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Roundtable program, spending part of your Sunday with us. A beautiful weekend on hand, fall, summer. We can't figure out which season we want at this point. But as we look at the calendar, and once again later this week, we are coming upon another anniversary of September 11th. And I wanted to spend our time this afternoon talking with you from a teacher's perspective, from an education perspective, and how hard it is 12 years later to still get this lesson across, especially to students who are so far removed, but these students being the future of our country, and obviously this terrorist attack on domestic soil being so very important still in the lessons they learn while they're in the classroom. Jason Schreiner, he is a social studies teacher from Whitmer High School. Joining us next to him, Joe Boyle, a history teacher from Rogers High School, both here in the Toledo area. Gentlemen, we took you out of class for a little bit of time this week to sit you down and talk about this. And thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
Jason, let's start off. And I guess I set the premise for our program to talk about this lesson that still needs to be taught, and you see it that way.
Absolutely. One of the things that I do is I look at 9/11 and its aftermath and impacts and intertwine it within the government class that I teach. It comes up through foreign policy chapters and decisions to be made by executives in Congress. But usually where we are is somewhere in the beginning of the course in the Founding Fathers. But when September 11th happens, I actually make an announcement that tomorrow, this will be on the 10th, that we're suspending the course. All right, and when the students walk in on the 11th, I walk in, just shut the lights off, which is automatically something that I hadn't done in the previous 3 weeks. Is just walk into class and shut the lights off. And
Kids are like, what's going on?
Yeah, what's going on? This is totally different. He said he's going to suspend it. What's going on now? And I just start the documentary that was made.
Which we're showing people at home right here, right now.
Oh, it's a wonderful documentary from filmmakers from inside the tower. And most of these students have never seen this. And it opens up with, it was just a normal day. And as it goes through, the kids really get to kind of have a relation with some of these firefighters, kind of understand what these people are going through. It's kind of seen through the eyes of these two filmmakers, plus showcasing a rookie on the force, and this is his first major fire. So we bring that in, and it has so much impact on the students and a lot of emotion. So I try to really harness the drama side of it, so it feels like a real event and not just a piece of history.
Give people, if you will, Joe, a feel. Obviously, as adults, as parents, we don't always hear everything we want to hear about what goes on during the school day. Kids don't come home and, how was your day? Yeah, it's fine. That's all we hear anymore. But what are the books telling? What are the history books? What are the social studies books telling these students of today about that event?
It's an interesting question. A lot of the books take a very clinical approach to this, and it warrants maybe a page, 2 pages, perhaps as small as a paragraph in some history textbooks with a who, what, where, why, when.
Yeah.
This happened on this day. It was terrorists from this organization, and it spurred a number of responses by the United States and the international community. What it's devoid of is the emotion, and the emotion is something that all of us as adults remember about that day. The emotion is perhaps the number one thing we remember about that day, and it's perhaps the biggest challenge in teaching the event is trying to inject the proper amount of emotion into the lesson when you're teaching the kids about it.
Because you can't, I guess, harness in a textbook what we lived through the weeks following. And you talked about making a trip to New York 9 days after the event, and for the next few weeks, there was that fear factor, there was that uncertainty, there was that just pure emotion. So you say it's kind of a catch-22. You don't want to tie that into the lesson, but don't you have to?
Yeah, it's the great balance. How do I make this emotional enough to get an emotional response out of the students, yet keep them removed from it enough to be able to study it like a historian? And a quote that I just love from William Faulkner was that the past is not dead, it's not even past. And in some ways the students might have the advantage in studying 9/11 over us because they don't remember what it was like to see a city on fire. And I remember vividly driving on the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway and looking over 9 days later and there's still smoke pouring out of Lower Manhattan. And it's really hard for me to back up and talk clinically about a terrorist organization that was founded for these reasons and did this and did that. It's more difficult for me to do the who, what, where, why, and then than it is for the kids.
Jason, how important is it, and how important is it to be specific? And where do you draw the line? There are a number of questions I want to get into, speaking to school districts and how they view how you should tell the tale of 9/11 if the books aren't doing a good enough job. So I guess specifics. Let's tackle that first. Okay. Where do you draw the line?
Well, I think everything's pretty much open, and we have not seen in Washington local an administrative team that has said you must do this and you
no
can
edict.
There's no not that there aren't any boundaries, but teach, show the emotion, show the sides. What were the arguments of one side versus the other on really all the issues, and we're really kind of open to do those things. We have to follow a curriculum, obviously, that the state has mandated, but we're really open to delve into controversial subjects. We do it in obviously social studies department, English department. I'm sure others do it as well, but definitely those two that allow a lot of critical analysis. And we're really they really want us to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. And really let these kids
total
critically.
autonomy. I mean, in a sense.
In a sense, yeah. I mean, are there times that there are students that may be bothered or upset by situations? We have a relatively high Muslim population within our school, so you have to balance those things so it doesn't look like that we're just coming out and say, well, it's all Muslim people or anything like that. Really focusing these kids and talking about extremism in these scenarios. And it's really easy when you've studied history to look at other extremist groups throughout history that have done similar things.
But as a department, Jason Schreiner, a social studies teacher over at Whitmer High School, joining us, as a department, going into Monday's classes, looking ahead to the week, knowing the 11th is coming up in just a few days, do you sit down as a group? Are there emails that are going back and forth these days saying, how are you going to handle it?
Yeah.
What are you going to cover?
We have a lot of collaboration that goes on, and obviously the books may give you a little bit of a platform to look at.
Do you agree with Joe? Do you find the books these days lacking
absolutely.
in what they should be telling?
Yeah, and really the books for me are just something I can send home, read that section, and let's bring it back and let's digest all this, what the book has said, plus everything that we've brought in as educators and we've shared in articles, and there's just so much more that we can do by bringing out outside sources, and of course that's fully based on the internet and access to all that. So the books are a nice guide. We have a classroom set of books. Some teachers don't really use the books as much because they have so many other things that they can use.
Joe, we talk about Joe Boyle, history teacher with Rogers High School, Toledo Public System. We talked about the specifics and getting into detail. There's a lot of graphic material. That movie, which you said you use as an example, there are moments where you hear thud after thud after thud after thud, and that we come to learn, or we did learn, those were people jumping, and the sounds from outside. That is a graphic depiction of that day. Do you scale back? Is that part of the emotion you have to kind of scale back?
Absolutely, and it's one of those. You asked a great question, saying where do you draw the line? Where are the boundaries of what's acceptable to do with 16 and 17-year-old people in your classroom? And I believe that walks us right up to that line. The thuds walk us right up to the line, and that's a point in the film where I always pause it and I say, I want you to think about what's happening every time you hear that noise. And the kids really react to that, and they get what I would almost say is a proper emotional response to that, to understand the gravity of what they're doing. Obviously, we all know there are the pictures of the jumpers that are out there, and the kids know enough from searching around the internet on their own. Will you show us pictures of that? Absolutely not. I mean, that's certainly, I believe, where that line has to be drawn, is that there's an appropriate and sensitive way to deal with it, and there's a way that perhaps crosses the line a little bit more.
Yeah, one of these articles talking about where people should draw the line, how they should tackle this. You talk about different materials, different ways teachers address this. In one article that I pulled, it says teachers address 9/11 as part of history, while others commemorate the anniversary with their students. And there are teachers out there who are hesitating, wondering how to go about it. This is 10, 11, 12 years down the road. These articles are coming out. They're still tackling it and struggling with how to go about teaching this lesson. My curiosity is that the further we get removed from it, do we start looking at this as when you guys and I were in school, and it was like learning about Pearl Harbor for our generation, and it was kind of like maybe it was a paragraph, maybe it was one page. Is that what we're seeing, you think, the reality of that? Why don't you start, Jason?
And I would say that we don't want to get to that point. With this being the 12th anniversary, we've had a lot of students at Washington Local end up graduating high school and going to the military. They've come back and spoke about their service overseas.
Not a cause and effect of lessons in class about 9/11, though. We want to point that out.
Yeah, not a cause and effect, but they have gone to Afghanistan and served, and were there as a direct result of 9/11. Now, maybe we're there, trying to stabilize the economy, or their government and their country now.
Yeah.
But we are there as a direct result. These students weren't necessarily inspired in the last couple of years, but they have gone and served. So to make it a dead historical topic, not that Pearl Harbor is, but that is distant, that is memory, and it was a war that had a beginning point and an ending point.
Yeah.
And what we see is this one, not necessarily in Afghanistan, but worldwide, it doesn't have an ending point. And this is really on U.S. soil. Hawaii feels like it's U.S. soil, but it's so far removed. These were on the streets of eastern cities. This is right in America. And the big piece is our government's still very active, so these things don't happen again. And with recent things in Boston, I think that may drive home this year a little bit different, that this isn't a dead issue. This is still a very live scenario for people.
Well, there have been numerous, and as these articles point out, there have been numerous terrorist scenarios that have played out over the last decade and plus. Since then, you bring up the Boston bombings this past year, the bombings in Madrid. I mean, you can go on and on and on with all of these experiences. And we have talked on this table numerous times about the desensitization that exists. Do you think, for us, we lived through it? These kids, your seniors were what? We were discussing, they were not even third grade. They were like kindergartners or first grade to that point. I hope I'm doing the math right as far as where they were. But when you look at that, do you see kind of, I can't put enough into this lecture to really affect them?
My default lesson when I started teaching in the 2003-2004 school year, when the seniors and juniors that I had remembered it vividly, and my de facto lesson for the first 9 years of teaching on September 11th was, today you're historians. You are the primary source. I want you to tell me exactly where you were. Tell me what color the walls were in the classroom where you learned it. Who was the teacher? Who sat in front of you? Who sat next to you? What was the rest of that day like? What was it like when your parents picked you up from school? And it was a detail-rich historical assignment. And as these kids get further away, if I could look back at all those papers, they get less and less detail-rich, and they become very abstract. And for us, I'm 38 years old. My history teachers in high school spent a lot of time talking about the Kennedy assassination in '63. That was their historical equivalent. They were 17, 18, 19 years old, and it was vivid, it was raw, it was emotional. And I look at the way I teach the Kennedy assassination today, having not been a historical eyewitness to it, and I do worry that 15, 20 years from now, is 9/11 going to get taught the same way it does today?
Yeah, or obviously we don't want it to happen. Tragically, something to trump it. Gentlemen, stay right there. When we come back, we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss a little bit more about the differences when you talk about teaching this at home versus teaching it at school. Is it more the responsibility these days for parents to handle the lessons, especially living through the history that we know as 9/11, and also the breakdown? Where do you draw the line as far as the lessons a high schooler gets and the lessons a grade schooler gets? Stay with us.